Next question up says, I have a question about squat programming. First of all, I've noticed that there's overload work for both the bench and the deadlift. However, I don't think I've seen it for the squat. Why is that? If I have knee wraps and could use them in my training, do you recommend fitting overload work in with those for the squat in that case? And if so, where? So overload work for the squat, I mean, it exists. It just kind of depends a little bit on the training group that you're in. Some training groups contain overload work, others don't. Others sequence it differently, you know, so you may have overload work but have just not gotten to the block where it exists yet. So I would say it probably exists. You know, there may be a couple training groups that don't have it, but it's not common. You know, I would say that most training groups have it at some point. So yeah, squatting with wraps is a good sub in. So if you see something else, then squatting with wraps is a valid movement to put in place there. Another reason that overload work is not as common with the squat is that it usually requires some sort of special equipment that most people don't have access to. With the bench, we can use towels, we can use boards. Most people will have access to some kind of a board or at least a bottle or something to limit the range of motion. With the deadlift, we can do rack pulls. But with the squat, there's not a whole lot of options. You know, I mean, there's obviously things like chains or wrapped squats or things like that, but not everybody has those. So that's one of the current limitations with guided programming, although that's something that I'm happy to say will be going away in the next 1 to 2 months, I would say. We'll be able to get you guys much more even individualized exercise selections in the next few months. We're working on a solution to that right now. But in the meantime, what can you do? You can just find a 4-week block where you want to sub it in and sub it in. You know, I would not do it in the last block before a competition. But other than that, you know, it's pretty much wide open. I would find a space where you can put it in there, get something out of it, and then move on from it and still have time to assess whether or not it worked for you, and that it wouldn't interfere with any sort of testing or competition prep. So you can always look at your calendar on the RTS website to see, you know, how far are you out from any sort of potential testing days or anything like that. Obviously, if you have a competition, you will know what day that is. But that's kind of how I would proceed with it, you know, and you're testing your response to it. So if you do overload work and it's great, then you'll want to do it again, maybe not right away, but in a training block in the future, you'll want to sub that in again because you know something a bit more about your response to it. And then also, if you do get a good transfer from it, you can put it closer and closer to the competition. If you do it, on the other hand, you don't get a good transfer from it, then you know, well, hey, that's not really a winner for me, and you can plan some other sort of movement. And oh, by the way, since you did it far enough away from the competition, you'll have enough time to kind of save the cycle and get your strength back if there were any strength losses or anything like that. But that's just kind of the name of the game as far as exploring your individual differences and exploring what type of programming you respond best to.